All right.
Hey.
Welcome. Welcome to the MAVEN live stream, everybody. Glad that you joined us this evening. We're going to try and jump right into this because I'm excited about this interview. And but let me say a couple of things first. We actually have our guest's book tonight. We have a couple copies of these. And we would love to get these into some of your hands for those of you who are tuned in. Want to get these in your hands. And so if you are not on our email list, that's going to be one way that we will give away one of these books. We will choose a winner. So while you're watching the live stream, open up another tab, go to maventruth.com and scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and there's a little place to enter your name, email address, and then we'll see that, and then we'll put you in the drawing for one of those books. And plus, you will get connected to our email notifications. So when we do live stream events and things like this, you will be the first to know. Okay, so that's going to be one of the ways that we give away books. Now, some of you might say, well, I'm already on the MAVEN email list. Okay, great. Then here's what I want you to do. If you are on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you are watching on the Facebook live feed, then just in the comment section, I just want you to say, hi, and tell us where you're from. Love to get a kind of feel for who's watching and where you're watching from. And then when I see your comment, I'm going to take your name and I'm going to enter it into the drawing for one of the books. Okay? So that's how you get into the drawing for the books, and you're going to want to get a copy of this book. A great book. Okay, so here's the format for tonight. In just a few moments, I'm going to turn it over to two of my favorite ladies here, and I'm going to let them take it away. And then after they have a conversation a little bit, I'm going to jump back in, and I'm going to be looking for your questions. So as you have questions or comments, if you're watching on YouTube, again, put them in the comments box. If you're watching on Facebook Live, put them in the comments section, and I will be monitoring those questions to feed to these ladies afterwards. So, and Erin, you will make sure that you remind everyone to ask their questions. Okay, so I'll pop back in for the Q&A. But with no further ado, I want to introduce these ladies. Number one, of course, sitting next to me is my wife, Erin Kunkle, who has really helped start MAVEN. And we do the MAVEN Parent Podcast together. She is a veteran mom of 5 children, and
Veteran sounds old.
a homeschooling mom, a very thoughtful woman, someone I highly respect. So that's Erin. Round of applause for Erin. And then another lady I have tremendous respect for, who's a friend, Cathy Cook, who's joining us all the way from Texas. And Cathy is, I would say this about Cathy. She is one of the best, I think, communicators out there, not only in just her ability to keep your attention, but also the depth of truth that she shares. She's written some incredible books, Screens and Teens. I always mix that up. It's Screens and Teens. Sometimes I say Teens and Screens. Screens and Teens. Excellent book on technology. Tonight, we are going to be talking about this. 8 Great Smarts is another one of her other books as well, and we will be linking to some of her incredible resources with Celebrate Kids in the comment section as well. So, all right, I'm going to turn it over to these ladies. I'm fascinated to listen in on their conversation. All right, Erin, Cathy, take it away.
Okay, give me that other AirPod. Thank you. Okay, so Cathy, we're going to jump in actually kind of at the beginning and just talk about even the backstory of your book, but just to give our listeners and even you, Cathy, an idea of where we're coming from. As MAVEN, we've done a couple of these webinars now that are geared towards parents to talk about this big topic of education and kids, especially during this time of quarantine and how school and education has changed so much. And we think your book goes hand in hand with the discussion we've been having at MAVEN about this topic. So we love your book. I'd love to just have you give a little backstory on the book and why you wanted to write it and kind of what motivated you.
Yeah, I would love to. So thank you so much, Brett and Erin, for allowing me this privilege. I love who you are and what you stand for. Maven is doing important work. I remember when I first saw the name, I don't know if you remember, but I'm like, what's this about? And I love the difference you're making as you stand among many others who are doing. Your emphasis on beauty and truth is really great. And tonight's topic is certainly, there are 8 different smarts, which I've written about in the book. When I was a child, Erin, I liked school. I have one older brother. We were both what I would call school smart kids. We were raised to value education. We were raised to believe in ourselves. We were expected to show up and do well musically, artistically, athletically, intellectually, spiritually, and all that. And I was kind of sheltered. I don't know about your background, but many of the kids I hung out with were like me. I went to a good high school. Well, I went to the university, earned a degree in teaching, and began to teach second graders. And Erin, the first year that I taught second graders, there were little boys and girls who said they were stupid. And they were, 7 years old. And I'm like, wait a second, where did that come from? How could you believe that about yourself already? And of course, they get that message from, unfortunately, moms and dads and siblings. And maybe there was a teacher, an adult, who said something disparaging that the child interpreted as, I am stupid, I am dumb, I will never amount to anything. But my heart was broken. And what I discovered very quickly was that if a child believes she's stupid, you're in trouble. Because you know what? They don't even study, because their attitude is, no, studying won't help, I'm stupid. Right? If you feel like you have intellectual capacity, rehearsing and studying and practicing and doing the rough draft and sketching the definition and following the direction of my mom or my teacher, that makes sense. But if your attitude is, I don't have enough brain cells, it doesn't matter, you give up. And I saw young children giving up. It was devastating. So that was part of it. There's another answer to the question, but react to that. Have you seen anything similar, or actually, how does that make your heart feel?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about, I had many wonderful teachers as I was growing up, and my mom was a teacher, so I did have a positive view of school, but I do remember my 3rd grade teacher telling me that I'll never be a good speller. She said, it's okay, just some people are like that, you'll just never be a good speller. And
never.
And I thought, oh, I guess I won't. And then I started saying that to myself mostly, and so then I just didn't, you don't feel the motivation to work hard. And I remember that as a kid. I'm 43 now, but I remember that vividly. And so, I think for sure that when kids hear these things, these labels maybe that are put on them, we can attach to those as human beings and not let go of those. And what a tragedy, in all different areas. But I still feel like I'm not a good speller. Although as a homeschool mom, I've become a better speller. But anyway, so yes.
Well, and your teacher was correct in that it's okay. Like so you might remember my story. Spelling isn't my strength, and we can talk about that if we have time tonight. And I've written 6 books, and I have an earned PhD. So it's better to know your strengths. One of the reasons that I love this model of education and this way of looking at children is it's strength-based. We don't talk about weaknesses. And, when kids know what they're good at, they have hope, and hope is what transforms you. And that's I'll just tell you quickly that the other thing that happened that really caused me to write the book was I began teaching this topic at homeschool conventions. Before I wrote my first book, I was doing teacher training in public and Christian schools and also homeschool events. And they were on the edge of their seat. They were like, what's the next one? I saw that they were so encouraged to discover, like we'll talk about tonight, that everyone's smart, but they're smart differently. And it's a power word. And so my audiences, and I know that you and Brett have had that happen, where when people respond to your ideas, you're like, whoa, maybe that is a good idea. And maybe I'm supposed to be a steward of that. And I believe, as born again believers, we have a responsibility to steward what we have been given. And that's why I don't write books because it's fun. I don't write books. Oh my goodness, no one should write a book thinking it's fun. It you write a book because you have a message that you want more people to understand.
Yeah.
And that was my passion,
Yeah.
and still is my.
And I can attest to that. We were at one of those conventions a number of years ago, and you were doing the talk about this book, and 3 of our kids were there with us. So I told them, I want you guys to go hear Dr. Kathy, because this talk is important. And the 3 of them are so different, and their smarts are different. And we're going to unpack this idea for people who are listening in just a second. But all 3 of my kids, after your talk, were just excited and encouraged. And as we're at dinner later talking about, I think this about, I think I'm smart this way, and I think my brother's smart this way, and just to broaden their perspective of how we are gifted and wired and all those things was just exciting. And I saw it in my own kids, which as a mom was just so encouraging. So, okay, so let's jump into the whole how am I smart? Because this idea assumes that everyone is smart, right? That we all have smart. So to a parent or educator that may disagree with that idea, how would you answer like that skeptical question of, is everybody actually smart, Kathy?
Yeah, that you worded that. I mean, you sounded skeptical. That was good acting, because I know that you, as you saw with your kids, you agree with this. Yes, let me answer it this way. Dr. Howard Gardner is the researcher behind this model. He's a brilliant psychologist at Harvard University, and he has a reason that it's a smart and not just a talent or an interest. Mm-hmm. There has to be a stroke. There has to be somebody with maybe a brain lesion. There has to be somebody who is a savant, who is only very capable in 1 out of the 8. He needs to find someone who's contributed greatly to the culture. So when it meets his definition of intellect, intelligence, then it gets labeled that. And so he does have evidence. These also operate separately in the brain. The reason that these are the 8 and he hasn't named a 9th, there's some talk of a 9th, but he's never said it is for sure true. Each of these resides separately in the brain. So if we did an MRI of someone doing a math problem, which wouldn't be possible, but if you did, you would see only that one part of the brain light up, if you will. So yes, we believe that all of us have the capacity to develop all 8. Now, if a child has a stroke in utero, which could happen, if an infant were in a car accident and would get brain damage early on before the brain is fully developed, then they're not going to develop all 8, but they were born with the capacity to have all 8. And I think that's the key. And the brain is a muscle, and it develops after we're born. Part of it develops prior to birth. About 20% of the communication capability is finished while you're still in utero, but about 80% of the power of the communication of the brain happens after kids are born, which is why early education and what you do with preschoolers, toddlers, and even infants is really important for brain development. So we do have the capacity to develop all 8, but they're different. There are school smarts and there are creative smarts. Somebody might be listening, Erin, who has a very talented artist, a boy or a girl who draws in her spare time and spends money on markers and does the murals at church and painted the sidewalk during quarantine and made all the windows in the home stained glass windows with special paint like a lot of families did, and the other kids in the family didn't do it. Well, that kid who painted, that kid is picture smart, not just creative and not just talented. And when you say to that boy or girl, well, you're able to do that because of how you're smart, then all of a sudden it's like, wait, I thought my brother was the smart one. The mathematician, the scientist, the literature reader, the good writer, those are the smart kids. I'm just creative. No. Oh, the power of saying to somebody the reason you're creative is because of how you are smart. Like, that'll preach. And the other thing I'll mention before I throw it back to you is that each of the intelligences has what I call a hierarchy of giftedness. If you could picture a pie chart, your brain is about the size of a small grapefruit. So picture cutting that into 8 pieces to represent the 8 parts of the brain. They're not equal. If somebody listening is very good at 2 or more languages, they are very word smart. If somebody is listening who's a CPA or an engineer. Maybe they, run a museum. Hello, Logic Smart. And maybe there's something else in their brain they don't have as much of. It's there, but it wasn't as developed early on. So we all have all 8. There's this hierarchy of giftedness within each of the 8. How many brain cells do you have of that? And then there's what we call school smarts and the non-school smarts, which is why some people think, no, I'm not smart, my brother is.
Yeah, I think.
Makes sense?
Totally, and I think that's where your book's so important, because we've been trained to think of smart as just the subjects that are covered in school, and or just school smarts like you mentioned. So okay, so let's get into the eight smarts, and because there are multiple intelligences, and so if we could just break down and just quickly go through the 8 to give the parents and teachers that are listening an idea of what the areas are.
Yeah, let me list them. Then we can keep interacting, Erin.
Okay.
So, smart, and there's a particular order, I'll explain the order. Word smart, when you are being word smart, you think with words. Everybody is word with words. When you're using the words, and when you're excited, you probably talk. So we're the ones who can listen rather easily. I was a chatty Cathy as a kid. So words number 1. The only reason it's number 1 is it's the one the kids think is the most important one. Smart. In Sunday school, we read and write. Children with a lot of ability here will find school to be an easier place to be. The second intelligence is logic smart. These are the kids who think with questions. They love it when the word the science and math. It actually is. And logic smart kids tend to enjoy their own, and they think with asking questions. So in school, we ask and answer questions. Yeah. So if you or your kids have a lot of in the parts, they will be able to handle the school experience better than other kids. The word and logic are not the 2 most important, but they are cool. It is why some people think other people aren't, and we're here to say, and we need to find out what that is so that we can honor that.
Okay. Yeah, keep going. This is good.
Okay. So now let's move into another group. Smart. We think in pictures with our eyes, or our pictures. So if you're raising a picture smart, they remember to turn left at the red building, where I want to know the name of the street, because I'm a smart person. So I'm going to say, no, the fact that you read fiction and remember it, you love history and remember. If I were to make a list, so I don't think by fiction. Sense?
Yeah, totally. I have some picture smart kids, so every time I hear you talk about it, I know exactly what you're talking about. And there's probably a lot of people listening going, oh yeah, the kid that doodles and loves to look at the pictures and remembers, like one of mine, I remember, she would always remember what the person was wearing. She would say, oh, the man, and he was wearing that white shirt, and I'm like, you remember what he wore? And just remembering colors and all that sort of thing. So, which, I hadn't even noticed. So, yes, love that.
Yeah, so that's a great illustration of being picture smart. And these kids need to know that they're smart, and they're smart too. And then the next one that's also a creative intelligence is music smart. And when you're being music smart, you think with rhythms and melodies, or you think with music if you want to simplify it, and you make it. So if these kids are stressed in a negative excitement or joyful in a positive way, they might click their pen or tap their feet, or the pencils become drumsticks, and it drives us nuts. And we could talk tonight about the role of obedience and the role of character. But music smart kids, again, need to think that they're intelligent. That I used to play many, many instruments. Music smart is still one of my greater intelligences. And let me throw something into the mix, Erin. All of us, I think, know people who did very well in school and not so well in life. Right? Those are people who were word and logic, and maybe the rest of their brain wasn't awakened, wasn't developed, wasn't strengthened, was denied. Maybe they were raised to think that doesn't matter, that you can do those things. So they camped very securely in word and logic, and they were really good in school. But guess what? Life is all about not logical things, right? I mean, hello, quarantine. Hello, protests. I mean, it's a mess. So logic smart people are totally stressed right now, more so than others. And how many of us know people where school was really challenging, but life has been easy? I know people who barely made it out of school, but life has been their dream. And that's evidence that all 8 matter. And what I want to empower people to do by writing, as you guys do, is to make sure that we develop all 8, because you know what? That's what leads to an abundant life. That's what leads to joy, both in an academic setting, whether that's, prior to grade 12 or college or military or career that requires learning, a Sunday school. I've got friends who are in their 80s still learning about Jesus. And that's so compelling. So, we're not called to just be, students in school. We're called to be students of life. And I think that's where all 8 of these become really, really important, if that makes sense.
Yes. And yeah, I think the way I used to describe it is it was called street smart. So you'd say, oh, that they were so smart in school, but they're like not street smart. And it's exactly what you're talking about, is this idea that, these areas were nurtured, but they needed some of the other areas nurtured too, because as you say, life, we leave school then, and then we have to navigate the world with not just in the parameters of school. So well stated. And the other thing to point out before I list the other 4 is that the intelligences never work alone. They always work together. So even though I'm describing them alone, as an example, logic smart and picture smart is geometry. Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Picture smart and logic smart is engineering. Picture smart and logic smart is where should I angle my foot? How should I angle my foot to kick the soccer ball through the goal? So when we develop all 8 in our children and in ourselves, because it's never too late, oh praise God, then we are going to have more joy in life and more a chance for greater success because of the way that the intelligences support each other. All right. Well, let's keep going. Okay. Body smart is number 5. Body smart kids think with movement and touch. And if you excite them, they move and they touch. So they might be athletes and actors and dancers and drummers, not necessarily a flute player that doesn't have a whole lot of body smart, to it. These kids they will be the ones that want to run the errands and pass out the papers and weed the garden and rake the lawn, because they actually love to move. And so again, they think with movement and touch. If you excite them, they probably move and touch. They might be ADHD or they might not. There are actually children who I believe have been diagnosed with a medical condition and they don't have it. What they have is a strength without self-control. And we may be medicating out of a child a great strength that God would want them to embrace. And I say that with humility. I think that's a hard thing for parents. I don't envy. I talked to a mom today with 10 children and an oldest with 2 children living with them.
Wow.
Under quarantine.
Wow.
And she's convinced 1 or 2 of them are, body smart, ADHD type kids. So it's hard, and I get that. Nature smart's number 6. Do you want to say something, or should I keep going?
No, keep going. That was good.
Okay. Nature smart's number 6, and these are the kids who would rather be outside than inside.
Yes.
They think with patterns. So it's like picture smart in that their eyes are important. But if you're nature smart, you remember that it's a bluebird, not a blue jay, an elm tree, not an oak tree, because you remember the pattern of the angle, or is the blue on the body or the wing, and is that leaf pointed around? So nature smart people, they like to get dirty. And here's another example. If you're logic smart and nature smart, earth science and biology and meteorology and oceanography, versus my brother, who's a clinical chemist, who is word and logic and picture as a scientist. So when children say to me, well, Dr. Kathy, I don't do science, I usually say, then we haven't found a science yet you can do.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I don't like letting people put themselves in those little narrow boxes.
Yeah, and the nature smart too, I think, to your point, that everybody has that to some degree, I think has been shown to me just in, you know, we'll be inside and you can feel a restlessness in the kids or whatever, and I'll say, okay, everybody outside, or okay, today is nature study day, so we're going somewhere, and when we're outside, what it does to all of us, you know, there's lots of reasons for that too, but I just think that's that piece that's in everybody. But then I for sure, have a couple of my kids that just love that time and remember the things that I didn't even notice, and can help us remember. One of my ones who is nature smart, she reminded me of a hike we did like 4 years ago, and she remembered specific places we stopped on the hike, and she's telling me this, and I'm like, wow, I'm getting older, so my memory's not so sharp, but geez, girl, you remembered a lot. And I was just so blown away by that. And so it's what your point about, it's in all of us, but then there's especially a smart that comes out in the ones that have that.
I love that illustration, right? We have, if you raise kids to be eclectic, they're going to have 4, 5, or 6 that you see operating on a regular basis. Frankly, that's an advantage of homeschooling your kids, because you tend to be more general in things. And I love that. And I love that because she's your daughter, she knows that you did well at that hike. You remember that hike because of how you're smart. It's not just that you have a good memory. You are actually smart. And that can help kids figure out careers and hobbies and interests. And you know that if this is your daughter, I mean, or was it your son?
Yeah,
Your daughter. So if there's somebody who wants to get to know her, they should go on a hike. They shouldn't sit in a dark den and try to have a conversation with a cup of coffee.
Yes.
And so this actually can be relational building as well, which is kind of a fun thing to think about. Well, let me talk about the last two, really important. People smart and self smart. When we're being people smart, we read other people's body language very easily, and we can either motivate or manipulate because of that. And we also are the ones who think with other people. So those of us who are people smart, we need other people to think with. I'm very people smart. I will often have a germ of an idea, and I need to talk it out. And it doesn't help me to just talk to myself. Word smart people don't need an audience. They just like the sound of their own voice, and they can talk. But those of us who were born by God to be people smart, there's something about the interaction, which is why I love doing things like this with bright people like you, because you stimulate my thinking. I can stimulate yours. Hopefully we're stimulating, many other people's thoughts. And it's a beautiful, rich thing. These kids can be a handful because they don't like being alone. They like being with other people so they can think with other people. If you excite them, they look for someone to talk to. I'll go on record, Erin, to say that I think it's the most important intelligence. I don't think the most important one is word. The reason I'm going to say that people smart is so important is that I think it's being awakened later because of texting and eyes down on devices. So we're raising too many of our kids not learning body language. Like you're nodding as I'm talking, and I know how to interpret that because at our age we know how to read and respond well to body language. We have too many kids who haven't learned that because we've allowed them to look down, and we haven't been good role models of body language because we're also looking down at our device, paying more attention to the phone in the pocket, and we're not learning how to network, brainstorm, agree to disagree, compromise when appropriate, persuade without debate. And that's why, I love what you're doing. We all love Summit Ministries and the Colson Center and these groups that help young people learn to know what you know and teach it to someone without debate and argument and making somebody feel bad if they don't agree with you. If I were to prioritize, which of these smarts should I emphasize as a mom and dad this summer with my kiddos, I would do people smart in a heartbeat. The last one is self smart, and it's the exact opposite. Self-smart people think deeply inside of themselves with reflection. They don't need an audience. They love their own brain. That can be pride, and that can be isolation that's dangerous. And again, under the quarantine, you could imagine how smart people have possibly been dying under the weight of not having enough people to talk with. It's different from extrovert, by the way, which we can talk about if anybody wants to. Self-smart people are maybe doing okay under quarantine because they love their own ideas. They don't need a lot of people feeding them truth. They get their joy from knowing what they know. Smart people get their joy from telling what they know. Self-smart people are very, very important to the family, the church, and the community and the system because they know what they know, what they know, what they know. The danger is that they don't tend to share it. And my encouragement to self-smart people who are listening is that you find the word smart, logic smart, people smart parts of you come alongside the self-smart strengths so that you can better your community by sharing the ideas that you've thought of.
Yeah, and I love you mentioned the extrovert thing, and I was gonna say the just even naming it people smart rather than he's so extroverted. The description of people smart is so much more full and really captures it quite well. And I'm thinking myself, I have to process out loud, and my husband's more self-smart. So yeah, that's interesting when you marry an opposite, right? Because he can process
And a lot
on
of
his own, and I'm like, what are you thinking? Process with me, and and then I have my, all 5 kids are quite different, and so the ones who are self-smart will be quiet and reflective, and I'm wanting them to process, with me, but realizing that they are processing and they will share later. And then having the patience with the ones who are people smart, even when you're people smart, the ones who, and they want to process with you all day long, and that can be exhausting, right? So,
Absolutely. And I
yeah.
love that you're laughing. And for people. And it doesn't mean that you're, using someone. It doesn't mean that you're weak, that you feel like you have a sign of your heart and your mind. If you're alone. Smart. So I need people to this is who I am and what you get. But we can teach said to me, well, teenagers have said I'm not nuts, that it's
Okay. Sorry, what, Brett? Oh, Kathy's audio cut out. Oh, your audio cut out, Kathy. Let's see if we can get it back on.
Okay.
Hopefully just for the last minute. Did it get power? Can you hear now? Okay. We're back. It just glitched for a second. We don't know why. Yeah.
What?
Yes. That is the truth. Okay, so I would love to talk, we could talk about how to discover the smarts of your kids. I think, I'm just thinking, well, it requires time spent together. So maybe this quarantine time, parents are feeling like they really do know the areas as you're describing them that their kids are really smart in. But how do we navigate differences? Like, what I brought up is when you have a kid who's self-smart, you're people smart. That's different, and it's hard to navigate, and it's hard not to be frustrated when our kids don't, function the way we do, don't work on the timeline that we want them to work on, and not only be patient with it, but then I think the next step is not only being patient but appreciating it. So how can just some tips on navigating the differences that you're seeing in your kid? These are actually areas that they're smart in. It's different from me, and how can we do that as a parent?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I love what you said. I think appreciating it is a key, that we decide that different isn't wrong or bad, different is different. And, they're created in God's image, not ours, so they're not going to be just like us. And the family unit is the family unit by God's design. And so why would God want every family to maybe have a logic smart kid? Because that's the cause-effect, comparison, contrast, sequential thinker who can plan the agenda for your picnic or whatever. So ideally we look at in ourselves, our spouses, and our kids, and we look for the benefit of someone being that way. I think that one of the things a lot of parents have said to me is that if you teach this to your kids, if you teach this to your spouse, you teach this to your children, you awaken all eight, you do talk about, which ones they have, and if people have questions about that, we can dig into that more, so that a kid understands that, okay, mommy's different, I need to give her a break. Mommy's ears are full, she's not as word smart as me, I'm going to go find someone else to talk to. And this is where we introduce our kids to other adults who can mentor them and service them well. As an example, a friend of mine married a very music smart gentleman. They have 4 daughters, and he wanted them to all learn how to play the piano. My friend didn't care a lick about a musical instrument at all, but she honored her husband and the family heritage of music. So she began listening to musicals. She began to listen to the classic musicals from Broadway, the old ones, Oklahoma comes to mind, which is a great musical, all the way to the modern day. And the first songs that the piano teacher taught her children were songs from musicals. A very simple rendition all the way up to a classic. One of their daughters just graduated from college with a degree in piano performance. Oh. Because that mom wanted to honor the husband and wanted to bridge to the mother-in-law and the father-in-law who valued music, and to her husband's siblings who all valued music. And she humbled herself. She did not learn how to play the piano, but she learned how to enjoy her children playing the piano. Interest is a key. Interest has to be there for ability to launch, so we look for interest. And I think we just have the conversations. Do we understand it? Can we have compassion? And you know what, my friend? Good old-fashioned obedience, where we say to a child, you know that I'm more self-smart than you. I need 10 minutes of silence, and then I will come listen to your story. 10 minutes. And your kids can learn that because they love you and they want to honor you. We have a right as parents to stand up for what we need so that we don't kill somebody in the middle of this, right?
Yes.
Thank you for laughing.
And all parents are laughing. Yeah, and on that point, I do want to talk about that too, because oftentimes as parents we'll find a strength in our kids, and so we'll use that sometimes as an excuse to not have the same expectations for all of our kids. Like for example, all 5 kids are different, but I have the same expectation for them when it comes to respect. And not only the respect they show me and my husband, but other human beings. And so this idea of character and obedience training, especially when they're little, how do we not let these areas of smarts become like, oh, well, they're word smart, so they just have to talk even when it's not appropriate to talk. Yeah. Give some parents some encouragement in that area.
Yeah, that's a great example to choose. And in my book, in each chapter, there is a section on character and obedience. And there's what I call sin by style. I think that'd be a great title for a book. Those of us who are word smart, we can gossip, name call, tease, bully with our words, always need the last word. No, just because we want that doesn't mean we should have that. Mm-hmm. But what happens, Erin, when I teach children and parents that the reason that's easy for you is because of how you're smart And do not let the devil have that. I've watched children as young as 5 and teens, as old as 19, say, wow, you're right. And so to understand that weaknesses, if this makes sense, what looks like a weakness, like anything well done, overdone is badly done. So too many questions? No, then it looks like I'm not going to respect you. I don't trust your authority. I'm not secure with you, so I'm going to keep badgering you. That's logic smart gone bad. And we need to understand that a logic smart child is stressed when things don't make sense. So as a mom, I need to do the very best I can to help her understand why, again, we cannot go to the park. And we state it. We ask her to state it back if she's word smart in particular. We say, sweetheart, I understand that it's painful in your heart, but talking about it won't change the reality. Let's find something to do. And then we distract that child, and we color, and we watch a great discovery show about something that she would have rather have done in person at a park, right? Picture smart kids don't get to color all the time. Sometimes they have to put their crayons down and look at me. Music smart kids have to be quiet. Here's what I teach kids, Erin. You live, learn, work, love in community. You have a responsibility to be a good community member. You're not allowed to do something that makes it hard for the teacher to teach or another kid to learn. It's called self-control. You can teach kids to talk inside their head without saying it out loud. There are kids who drum. Do you have any kids who are body smart, music smart, and they take their fingers and they drum on the table and you just want to chop their fingers off? Because if you're just like, you're thinking of your own song to go with the beat, or you're just tired. Well, if I put my hand on top of my son's hand, how many seconds before something else is going to bebop, right? Because they're thinking with music, and when they're excited, they make music. So it's not how do I get them to stop that. It's how do I redirect all that energy to something that's less irritating. And what I've taught kids to do is to take their fingers and do it on their thigh under their desk. And I'm doing it right now. And I say to kids, I know it's not as satisfying because it doesn't make noise, but it's not about you being happy all the time. You don't get to win. You live, learn, work, and love in community. And you have a sister at the table doing her work. You have a dad over there on the phone. So you can take your fingers and you can choose to be satisfied by an alternative behavior. And that's your power. You can choose to be satisfied by an alternative behavior. And that's what we begin to teach children when they're old enough, old enough to receive that. And we have to model it too, Erin. We have to model it too.
Yeah, I think the idea of self-control and the importance of parents teaching kids that no matter what type of kid they are, it is so important. But I love how you talk about acknowledging to your child or your student, if you're a teacher, I know you want to do this, or I know this is what you're feeling, but in this circumstance that we're in, we have to find an alternative, or we have to wait, or whatever. And I have my youngest is he's moving all the time, and he's talking all the time. And so I remember when he was 4, and I had to take him to a doctor's appointment with me, and it was actually for me, not for one of the kids, which is normally 4. And so I'm driving there, and I'm feeling stressed because I'm thinking, I need to talk to the doctor. He's going to have to go in the room with me. This is going to be a disaster because he's just going to be talking the whole time. So I said, okay, Jonah, I know we're going to the doctor, and I know you're going to want to talk to him. And so when we get there, you get to ask 2 questions to the doctor, and then that's it. And then it's actually mommy's doctor's appointment. So then you have to be quiet while mommy talks to doctor. After we leave, then you're free to, talk and again, but you get 2 questions. So think about it.
Brilliant.
Choose wisely. But, it's just because I'm driving there stressed thinking, I know this is what he's going to want to do, and it's going to, drive me crazy or whatever. And so just thinking and acknowledging, I know this will be hard, or I know you're going to have this urge, or, you know, I know sitting in church is difficult, and so we'll bring things to draw, or, but you do have to
Yes.
stay quiet when someone's praying, or you do have to sit at the table when we're having dinner for grandma's birthday, even though you're going
Yes.
to want to get up, you know, and these sorts of things of just, I think that's so important what you're talking about, of acknowledging it and then helping them to walk through how we deal with it.
I appreciate that. And your examples are so helpful, Erin, because you're allowing your kids to be successful. You're saying, I get you, I know you, I love you, and this is how I'm going to help you be successful here. You're not yelling and telling, you're preparing and equipping, and you're giving them hope that eventually they'll get to talk again, or eventually they'll get to move again. And then I love the idea of equipping them to be successful. You know, in church, let them draw and let them doodle and give them a quiet little toy to play with, that their body's smart and movement and touch is important to them. Yeah, we can do this. Kids tell me all the time that when they're allowed to be who they were created to be, it's easier for them when they can't. But if they're never allowed to be who they were created to be, they're so defeated that they fight. Make sense?
Yes.
So if you have a word smart, logic smart, and later in the day they're going to have to be quiet, let them in the morning have their moment, if you will, and let them get some of it out of their system. Now, I know there are some people listening. They'll say, Kathy, it doesn't work. They have so much in them. Maturity happens. Growth does happen. Self-respect, self-control, and respect for others are the three most important character qualities. Self-respect, because then I want self-control. When I have self-respect and self-control, then I can have respect for others. And that is essential for me to use what is in me for good and not evil, and to want others to shine in their moment as well. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to go to question answer in a little bit. So I just wanted to remind people to put questions up in the chat box, and we'll be getting to questions in a few minutes. So, okay, thinking about this time that we're in, Kathy, and well, you know, one of the reasons, again, we wanted to have you on is because now everybody's been doing school at home, either by choice or not, but everyone's been at home. And so parents who weren't doing school at home are now having a perspective that they, you know, didn't have before. They're in the daily grind of all of those things. And so thinking about these multiple intelligences and how we educate our kids, because, you know, education, of course, is more than what is done in a classroom, for sure, especially from a Christian worldview. You know, the education of our kids is about life, and it's about being a human being and what that means. And so thinking about our different systems of school, do you think, you know, our current systems are well equipped for this kind of nurturing of our kids, or do you think there are ways that schools can be a stumbling block, or ways of education can be a stumbling block to kids?
Yes, those are fair questions. I think that the pressure that teachers are under in what I would call a brick and mortar school, a public school, even a lot of our private Christian schools, private secular schools, the pressure they're under to finish content and test their children makes it almost impossible to honor all 8 of these, because there's not enough time for the drawing of the mural and the acting out of the play and the singing of the song and the creative writing and the poetry and the memorization of the skit. Unfortunately, there are many, fortunately, there are many teachers who wish they could do that, that have been trained well to honor the whole child, and they're so frustrated that the system is robbing them of the ability to teach to the whole person, the whole mind, the whole heart. So I will go on record to say that most of our schools are using curriculum that is word and logic, way too much testing, which is mostly word and logic and rote memorization. And therefore, the kids who don't have a lot of word and logic do not feel bright, and I believe will underachieve post-high school. They may assume, sadly, that they're not to go to college or technical school or military. And I don't think every kid needs to go to college. I think we need a lot of kids to go to our trade schools. And that has nothing to do with smart or less than smart. It has to do with so many other things that are beyond the scope of tonight. So it's probably, I think that homeschooling done well, not schooling at home when you didn't want to, and you've got Zoom calls with teachers 42 times a day.
Yeah.
I have the greatest compassion for people, both the parent and the kid and the teacher. It's been hard. I have the utmost respect for teachers who have done it well. I do think that homeschooling well, when you're called to it, you choose to equip yourself with understanding curriculum. You understand that you can sit anywhere in the home to do it. You can have a lot of field trips and museum trips and cooperative ventures and all kinds of things. Like if you're let's say that you were studying history and you have a nature smart kid, she could study an explorer. If you have a logic smart kid, she can study a politician. In a homeschool home, that's much easier to do than in a system when a teacher has sometimes over 100 students at the middle school, high school level, sometimes too many at the elementary level. To know the kids well, to change up the assignments, to figure out how to grade it all, it becomes so overwhelming. And a lot of classrooms, they don't have space anymore either for the table in the back of the room where you can do the extra activities. So I want you to understand, Erin, and you know this to be true, there are many fabulous teachers out there who wish they could do it better. Yeah. And their hands are tied. And if I were parenting school agers and I wanted them to believe in themselves and to find themselves so they can be who they were created to be, I'd homeschool. Even if it's hard. Yeah. It's a different kind of hard. Yeah. It's a different kind of hard.
Yeah, and I think
and I don't say that lightly.
Yeah. And to your point about, school, the brick and mortar school is the word and logic smart heavy, I think is good for parents to think about, even if, they're going to stay in that system and they don't have any intention, because then if you know that these are areas that aren't high on your child's list, then you would have a different attitude and expectation, wouldn't you, when it comes to those things, and you would understand, well, I shouldn't have the expectation that this one's going to perform at school like this one, because it's lower on their scale of smarts. And then you also know that I really need to nourish and encourage the ways that they are truly smart, the high ones. Yes. And so even if you're in that system, as a parent, knowing that can make all the difference in the world with your kid.
Yes. Oh, thank you. That's brilliantly stated. And I'll add to your example, a quick example. Let's say that your child is in school and has to learn vocabulary definitions, which is a word and logic smart task, and maybe they're challenged by it. If you know that child is picture smart, let him sketch the definitions. And even if you don't know for sure if picture smart is a strength, now I've added a third smart, and now my child is studying apartment, condo, house, farm, construction. They're studying all these words with word, logic, and picture. And if I have 3 out of the 8, that's better than only using 2 out of the 8. So even if the teacher doesn't assign a different way because the teacher doesn't know or is overwhelmed and feels he can't, we can at home. And we can let our kids study spelling words with smelly magic markers in their favorite color or gel pens in their favorite color on their favorite color paper. Even though at school they'll take a spelling test with a boring lead pencil on a boring manila paper, we can at home, when we support our children, consider how they are smart and how we can help them learn. And that, again, is in my book. Every chapter is full of ideas about how to help them learn according to how they're smart.
Yeah, and like you said, there's so many teachers. My mom's a retired teacher, and she was one of those teachers that I know there's, millions out there that would spend the extra time with students and knew that, had a classroom full of kids, but tried to do the out-of-the-box stuff as much as she could, seeing that her students were all different. And so, incredible teachers out there that are trying to work within the system, but also navigate with a lot of kids. So, yeah, it's a good word to say. So, okay, so we're going into summer here with our kids. So how could we use summer, or what are the benefits, do you think, that maybe parents could use the summer to really encourage their kids in their smarts, maybe start, I mean, is it just starting to use this language with their kids? Are there, maybe just even broadening their kids' idea of, even though we're in summer, we're still learning, and we're going to spend time learning a way that you seem to love, or, that sort of thing. So thinking about summer and parents and reading your book, and, well, your book has lots of ideas, but what do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think that one of the most important things for our children is to start the next academic year hopeful. And this was a hard spring.
Yes.
Whether they did well academically or not, it was hard, and it was frustrating, and it was lonely, and it was challenging, and it was different. And so there might be a warped view of education, a warped view of learning, and a warped view of self, because they maybe didn't do well over Zoom, or they didn't get to have the creative energy of a lot of people in the room and all that. So I think one of the most important things we do is we make sure that they know that the spring is not a definition of who you are. It's not a definition. It doesn't cement you as this is your way going forward. I think to awaken and strengthen all 8 in the summer is critically important. If you know your kid is going to take biology or earth science, go dig in the garden this summer. If you know your kid is taking a creative writing class, then read more and point out rich verbs and really vivid adjectives. So if you can predict what's going on in their academic calendar, then you could go to that museum when the museum's open. You read those books. If you have a kid who's not a great reader, and she's going to be taking a history class, and she's studying the history of California, go to the library or go online and get some books about California in an easier vocabulary and read those this summer. Go to the right websites and pretend that you're going to take a bike tour of the whole state of California and learn the whole state of California as a bike rider, because your girls and boys love bikes. And now when your child sits down in a 4th, 5th, 6th grade history class, California is up here. Vocabulary is up here. The pictures from that YouTube video or that TED Talk or that book that they read with you are up here. That's one of the best things we can do for kids, is enrich their vocabulary, enrich their experiences through the different intelligences.
Yeah, and I think too, the question often comes up about summer and boredom. And so, if screens is an issue in your home, you need to read Kathy's book, Screens and Teens, because it's not just actually for teens, it's for all kids. But so instead of just shoving screens at our kids all summer, talk about, using their smarts to kind of, direct their boredom. Not that boredom is bad all the time, I have to say, because it's gives our mind time to imagine. But talk about boredom and how we can steer that with kids this summer too.
Yeah, well, Erin, I love that. I like to say that we are not the cruise director. We should not be trying to entertain our kids 24/7. We're going to be exhausted by 10 in the morning.
Yes.
And why do they struggle with boredom? Because they don't have the initiative to figure out what to do on their own. Because they either go to a screen or they say, "Mommy, I'm bored," and then Mommy fixes it. So I really want to encourage our listeners to empower our kids this summer to know yourself and figure out what you would like to do. And I think one of the things that we can do is not put all of the creative activities back in the closet. Don't put all the board games in the closet. Have a checker game and a Sudoku book and a coloring book and the markers out on the coffee table and a Frisbee at the back door. And I think it's easier for kids to think of things to do when they see that there's something to do. I think, having a lot of conversations is really important. I'm a huge fan of Jigsaw Puzzles. Quiet, as you were saying, is really good to restore the soul, and wisdom rises when we're quiet, so we need not be afraid of that. I also think that one of the best things to do in the summer is to use your talents in meaningful ways and use your skills in meaningful ways. One of the most important things that happens in learning is that you learn something and you apply it. Like I pray tonight, and you pray, and Brett prays, that there are people listening to us who are going to have aha thoughts and apply it. Otherwise, we've wasted our time, because knowledge doesn't change anything. But it's the application of knowledge in wisdom that is right. So in a lot of our schools, and even in our home schools, we don't spend as much time using what we've learned as we should. The using of what we've learned is what enhances our memory of what we've learned. So one of the best things to do to combat boredom, I think, this summer, especially if you home educated your kids by choice or by default, you know what they've learned. Did they learn compound words? Did they learn the difference between an amphibian and a reptile? Did they learn the history of Arizona, California, the United States? Now, what could you do with that knowledge? Could they have a conversation with the people at the nursing home? Could they have a different type of a FaceTime phone call with grandpa? So that they use that knowledge in a way that is meaningful, and they pass on their talent by serving, to play the piano for the neighbor, to weed the garden for the neighbor because, hey, you're nature smart, let's go do this for our neighbor who had knee surgery and can't bend down. Now you're training your kids to, again, steward who they are, and we serve. Why are we created? To make a difference in the life of other people. So that we're not going to be bored if we choose to serve with our talent and use our knowledge in instructional ways.
Yeah.
And when kids know how they're smart, it's easier for them to figure out what to do with a half a day or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Also in my book, I end every chapter with board game ideas for each smart.
Oh, yeah.
So you could purchase new games for each of the smarts and play them.
Yeah, and we're going to go to question and answer, but I love that idea, Kathy, of talking to our kids about their smarts and then looking outside of ourselves and how we can use those smarts. Because as Christians, we know this is how God wired us, and it wasn't just so we could show off. And he wants us to use that then in the lives of other people. And so not just always saying, "Oh, you're just so smart in this way, and it's just great how you fulfill your own life with it." It's like, no. Now, what are you going to do with that? What can we do with that to bless others? And that is just a beautiful way to remind them to look outside of themselves, and that the smarts can be a blessing, for everyone around us too. So, okay, we'll let Brett come back in, I guess, with some more questions.
Only if the questions make us look good, right?
She said only if the questions make us look good.
Hey, this has been great sitting here listening to you guys, but I have to say, hearing all this processing out loud tires me out. I'm kind of tired. No.
Because you're so smart, yes.
Oh, did you hear that part? I ratted you out on that.
Yes, you did. I heard that. Thanks for telling on me. Hey, no, this is great. And in fact, Kathy, I'm sitting there thinking, this is not just for parents. Really, this is for grandparents. This is for educators. I mean, this is for Sunday school teachers to really help look at the uniqueness of each kid.
It is. And some people don't want to because it's challenging. I have 11 little fourth graders. I want to treat them like they're all the same. Well, they're not. Get over it. I can say that because I'm not the teacher. But, if you want them to feel safe with you, then you will discover why they are who they are and honor their design and find ways to the best of your ability to meet their needs and allow them to be successful. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got about 20 minutes for questions. Now, we did say we were giving away a couple of Kathy's books, and the 8 Great Smarts, Discover and Nurture Your Child's Intelligence. If you don't win one of these, you need to get on Amazon and buy one of these. Great book, but I'm going to give the first one away, and choosing. Let's see, I think I'll choose from our YouTube comment section, and let's see. First name I see right there is Hedges1996. Who is actually Sharon using her husband's account. Sharon, okay, this book is yours. So Sharon, if you were watching, which I think you're still watching, hey, email us at info@maventruth.com, and we will mail this book out to you tomorrow. Okay? All right. And look, there's still time to enter. I've got one more book to give away if you're watching. And if you are not signed up for Maven's email list yet, just go to maventruth.com, scroll to the bottom, sign up for our email list, and then we will choose somebody who's not on the email list, who is signed up tonight for the second book. Okay. All right, great. So we've got, kind of a quiet audience tonight, not ask as many questions. But Sharon actually asked a couple of questions that I think are good questions. She let me see, let me look, read this one. Sharon says, you said that if you could choose one smart to work on over the summer, it would be, you'd pick People Smart. And so she's asking, what are some practical suggestions for fostering and developing this in ourselves and our children? So let's say if you took that smart, what are some practical ways to help foster that?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that so much. One really fun way is for us to show a facial expression and have the kids guess what it is. So like, Erin, show me shock. What would your face look like? Yeah. So you would do that and you would ask a kid, what does my face look like? And would they guess, would they say fear or shock or anger? And do they get it right? Because part of being people smart is reading body language and responding appropriately. So here's another one. You know, how many people, we used to think if you sat with your arms folded like this, you were obviously angry. Well, that's not at all true. Sometimes you're just comfortable or cold. What does anger really look like? So really to have those conversations. One of my two other ideas that are two of my favorites. One is to go for a walk. Now back when you guys, if you live where you can go out and about, I live in Texas where we're pretty free now. So you can go to a store, you can go to a restaurant, hold your child's hand and tell your child to look for somebody who's fearful and have them squeeze your hand when they see it. Don't shout, oh, she's the fearful one, mommy. But just, or when you see somebody who looks lonely, squeeze my hand and then respond appropriately. Because the smart people want your child, a 9-year-old or a 14-year-old, to go up to somebody at the grocery store and say, can I help you? You look like you're lost or lonely. Would that be something you'd want for your kids, or is that a boundary? And then another one that I really enjoy doing that people have told me works well is to watch TV or movie with no sound and predict who's angry, who's sad, or Erin, who's in charge of the conversation. So turn off the volume. And can you figure out by watching who is in charge of the conversation, who's bullying who's at peace, who's shy? That can be very, very helpful and fun.
Yeah, that is a great idea. Yeah. And I'm thinking, if nothing else, for my teen daughters who, you talk to them about the face they have on, or
yes,
and you say, you talk about, you change that expression please on your face because it's saying a lot. So even for that, of like, hey, we don't realize it, but you are unconsciously, how much nonverbal's going on. So what a great exercise to do, and say, look how much we can tell about what's going on with no words.
I just thought of really another practical idea, Kathy. You tell me what you think of this, but I could have the kids, when they come into a room and mom's there, and I was like, can you assess mom's
mood? Yeah. No, we are not.
These people skills could become real handy.
Yeah, and then warn you. Yeah, stay out of the way. Stay out of the way, Dad. Yeah.
I would not go out there, Dad.
Okay, all right.
But let me quickly. I'm going to give you one more that I think is really important. Yeah. I know we're tight for time, but you know what? The other thing to remember about being people smart is that we benefit from sharing with other people, and we bounce ideas back and forth. So the other very practical skill, of course, is how do you share an idea with the intent to listen to someone else's interpretation of the idea? So you have to be humble. You have to slow down. You speak it. You don't argue if they disagree. So that whole, how do you network? How do you share with the intent to make bigger your understanding, if you will, versus just to share because I'm so smart, I know what you don't know. So I think that would be a really cool thing to practice this summer.
Yeah. All right. Those are really great practical ideas. There's more in the book. Okay, we're going to get to a few more questions here. This is from Alexandra on YouTube. And she says, what advice do you have for teachers to help foster this idea of different types of smarts within the classroom? So is there practical?
So I appreciate
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that question so much. The first thing that comes to mind is if you're doing a long unit, let's say you're doing a 2 or 3 week unit on amphibians or a 1 week unit on suffixes and prefixes, ideally we don't use the same smart every day. So maybe we introduce a unit about the state of California or amphibians, and we introduce it with logic, and we do a comparison contrast, and we draw a chart on the whiteboard of who's for and against, or what's an amphibian versus what's a reptile, or whatever. So very logic smart on Monday, and then on Tuesday you let them draw, which is picture smart. On Wednesday you maybe have them write a poem, which would be word and music. On Thursday you maybe do a small group activity, even if it's just a 10-minute really quick brainstorming session, that would be people smart. So I think the A key is that over time you use as many intelligences as you can, not in one 30-minute session because everybody will have a headache, but over time. And I also think that we don't have to always start with word and logic. Even though if I think back to my textbooks, so much of the curriculum being word and logic, we introduce and we begin our teaching, even in a Sunday school setting, with word and logic. Well, now right away, the kids who don't have as many of those brain cells are already off put and they're thinking, this isn't for me, I'm going to be struggling all day. What if we started with sketching the definition on the very first day? What if we started with, a music song from that era that we're studying in the history class? And the first 10 minutes is a song that's really fun. And that awakens a part of the brain that otherwise would be sleeping.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah. All right, another question here, Kathy, from Kristen, who's a friend of ours who lives in Utah. She asks, how can we, in brief encounters, maybe help other people see the differences in their kids, kind of uncover this and discover this idea of smarts, particularly if the parents are maybe pessimistic or critical? How do you come alongside another parent to help them see some of this stuff?
Well, you buy the book and anonymously deliver it. You make sure that they are. Is this thing that we're doing here available on the MAVEN website, or will it be on Facebook for a while? I'll be on YouTube, right?
It'll be on our YouTube, MAVEN Truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be on.
Maybe,
yep.
Yeah, so people need to tell a friend, hey, I learned something about myself and my kids. I think you'd enjoy it. I mean, I think sometimes they need to hear from the expert because you can't always be the expert. They don't want to think that you're right. And that's so awkward and so wrong, but I think sometimes that's true. I have found for me, one of the best things to do is to use the language of the smarts. So if you hear a parent say, well, my kid is creative, well, that's because she's picture smart. Well, what do you mean? Well, she thinks with pictures. That's the way that she's been designed to reason with truth. And you have somebody say, oh, my kid she would spend every day outdoors if she could. She likes getting dirty. It's the most disgusting thing. Well, actually, maybe it's a beautiful thing if you change your perspective because God chose to wire your child that way. And I recently learned that she likes to be outside because that's the way she thinks. She's nature smart. She thinks with patterns, and it's natural. So the language is powerful, that you're word smart, not just a good reader, logic smart, not just a good scientist. That's huge.
Yeah, and I think about especially like bringing grandparents along. We have lots of conversations with other parents about, we're on board, but then we go to grandma and grandpa's and they really, are on a totally different page or whatever. And I think about a conversation we had recently with some friends whose son is, he loves to move and he's a really good dancer. And grandpa wants him to be a football player, not a dancer. And the conflict that's brought up. And so just, I think this is an issue sometimes with, maybe parents are on a different page, but then grandparents or these people that are really important people in your life and in your kid's life, and you don't want to let them say things to your kids that could be, in some ways damaging, but also you want them to see it with these new eyes of how you're seeing it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think parents have a responsibility to be advocates for their children. And as hard as it can be with aunts, uncles, grandparents, babysitters, whatever, to say, school is different now, Dad. Life is different now, Dad. I know you're loving Junior the very best way that you know how, and we need to ask you to love him differently. And can you affirm that he enjoys being a body smart, music smart dancer? It's not going to ruin him. It doesn't mean that he's going to, whatever the grandparent might be thinking. But yeah, it's hard.
And you
I also
go ahead.
I love it when kids learn to stand up for themselves, respectfully.
Yeah, and if they have this language of smarts too, I think it gives them a confidence to speak. I'm more this smart, and so that's why I like doing these things. But you do talk about in the book, sometimes gender and even racial expectations that we'll have in the smarts and how that can come in too. So anyways, it's an important part of thinking through all of this too, and expectations with our kids and that other people might place on them too.
Okay.
You know what? I've got Brett. I'm sorry, but I gotta say this because this is so important. I love this question, and I want everyone to hear what I'm going to say. That grandpa who wants the grandson to play football is grandparenting from his own brokenness. I could almost guarantee it that he didn't make the team, or his son didn't make the team, or only had a daughter who couldn't play football. When I watch a parent or a grandparent try to push a child into something that the child is absolutely disinterested in, there's something really wrong, isn't it? And I want us to be loving and understanding toward that person's situation as well. So we need to try to redirect out of the goodness of our heart toward our kids without breaking. So I didn't want to come across as harsh, like they just need to love the dancer that boy is. I want us to also understand that that's the way they love, and they're loving out of their perspective that playing football is really cool, or it's the way that boys grow up. Whatever they're thinking is valid for them, and we can try to walk with them to some new understandings.
That's good. Thanks, Kathy. Okay, so we've got time for a couple more questions. Got about 10 more minutes here. So here's one of the questions. A couple of good questions here from Sharon. How does being an introvert extrovert correlate with the 8 great smarts?
Great question. We don't think there's any correlation. However, we'll never know for sure because there's no test you can take for the smarts. There is an assessment. If you buy my book, that you get a magic code to an assessment. But to take an assessment, you have to be word, logic, and self-smart. So it's almost invalid, which is why Dr. Gardner, the inventor of all of this, will never endorse a test. So we won't know for sure the correlation. I have met many people like me who are self-smart extrovert, self-smart introvert. I mean, there's all the different combinations. The key is to understand why there's that internal conflict so that we don't think that we're needing drugs, or that I've had people say, Brett, I thought I was bipolar because sometimes I'm really happy and joyful and I love to be with people and then I have to isolate. No, you're an extrovert self or a people smart, introvert. So no correlation. I think the combinations are just possible in any number of ways.
Yeah. And you answered the second question, which was, hey, is there a questionnaire to try and identify this for our students? Hey, I want to let
There's other ways you can figure out how kids are smart. What do they do in their spare time? What do they spend their money on? What gets them into trouble? Is it talking, asking, drawing, making music, getting dirty, paying more attention to the dog than their geometry? And then when they do talk, what do they talk about? When they do ask questions, what do they ask about? Is it always about science? Is it always about nature? Is it always about music? So you can begin to observe behavior. And I think that's the best way, along with academic success. Surely what in school, what is their favorite subject? What do they do well in? those are better ways of looking at kids, because they also grow and they change because they're awakened. And when an intelligence is awakened, like the first time that they finger paint and they have a yellow hand and a blue hand that makes green, now they want to finger paint for 5 days in a row. And you didn't intend for that to happen. And now you have a messy kitchen 5 days in a row. But what happened was the picture smart, logic smart part of them was awakened. And now they look very picture smart, when in reality they may not be at all. And then you're gonna watch that kind of valley back down and go back up. And so it's not so much which of these are the top 4. It's in this moment, what are their strengths? What do they intend to enjoy doing? Yeah. That's what I would look for.
And so as you're saying that right there, it's making me think about how important I think the Christian worldview is, because you're giving an approach to children that requires having a certain view of children, that they are these dignified, amazing, wonderful creatures that are so unique. They're made in the image of God, and yet they have their own unique personality. And there's no just formal test that will just spit out, here's the right answers about your kid. Instead, a creature so amazing and so dignified like that has to be studied, has to be carefully observed.
Yes.
The dignity requires that, and it's dignifying for us as the parents and the adults to become students of our own kids,
Yes.
And I just think it's important to help people see this is what we're talking about really flows out of a deep, rich Christian worldview, and answering the question, what does it mean to be human, is such a vital question as we parent our kids.
Yes. So. Amen. I love that.
Anyway, you got me fired up there, Kathy. Okay.
No.
Well, I think we'll take one last question before we do that. I just want you, everyone out there who's watching, to know that Kathy has an entire online course on the 8th grade smarts. And so if you go to her website, celebratekids.com, you will see that front and center on the homepage. And her organization is offering a special code, so that when you click to enroll in this and then you use the coupon code CK Special, you'll actually save $90. That's over half the price of this course. And so this course and the book will just help to take you so much deeper into this and really becoming that kind of student of your kid. So I just want to encourage everyone, take advantage of that class and the special discount price that Kathy's offering. So
thank you so much for mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and go to Kathy's website too, because all of her books are there. And also, I was on your website recently too, Kathy, and because one of our kids is high picture smart, I saw, well, you had mentioned last time we were together that you have a Bible for picture smart people. And her birthday's coming up, and I went on your website, and I thought, oh, this would be such a great birthday present for her, and I know she would just love it. So if you have a picture smart kid, or you're a picture smart person, you might want to get that Bible too. So go to Kathy's website. There's so many great resources on there.
Yeah, her other books, Screens and Teens, as I mentioned, for those of you who are struggling to manage technology with your kids, excellent book. I recommend that all the time. 5 to Thrive, meeting the 5 core needs of your kids. So you could make it a Kathy summer and just go onto her website, go to celebratekids.com and buy all her books and just let Kathy mentor you this summer, okay?
Yes. Oh, that's a great idea.
I love it.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
So many great resources, Kathy. Okay, I want to take one last question. Let's see, what? Okay, I'm trying to make sense of this one. Helpful questions. What do they do in their spare time? What do they talk about, etc.? And look at these things in the moment. Shoot, Sharon, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I'm wondering if that's a response to one of the things that we said here.
That's what I was talking about. That's how you can determine how they in the moment.
Yeah, that's
maybe she's
okay. She's
what do they do in their spare time? What do they spend their money on? What do they talk about? because I do know that it is valuable to try to predict their top 3 or 4 so you can make better curriculum choices or find books they might enjoy or find activities on a Saturday for your whole family to enjoy. It is valid to want to know that, and that's what I was saying, that those are some fun ways to figure that out.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, basically Sharon saying, way to go, Kathy. Great questions, helpful questions. And that's one of the things I love about your work, Kathy. And I think this is always the challenge for us, for someone like you who thinks carefully about these things and really can get deep academically, but is always balancing the thinking and tying it into the practical stuff. And I think that's where that's why parents have actually really have responded to our MAVEN conferences, because sometimes it's one or the other, or oftentimes it seems like it's one or the other. Either it's just overly academic, or it's overly practical. So you just get all this pragmatic stuff, but there's not the underlying ideas and philosophy to drive it along and maintain it for the long term. And I just love what you do in that you bring together head and heart and hands in kind of the full package and really equip parents and leaders and teachers and church leaders. So anyway, Kathy, thank you for your work.
Well, thank you. And being a part of your conference in February, praise God, we were able to have that before the quarantine.
Yeah.
And I mean, what you're doing is significant. I'm really honored part of your act.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hey, for those out there who are listening,
Did you give away the last
I did not
book?
give away the last book. We got to give away
Oh, give it
Kathy's
away
last
real
book
quick.
here. So I'm going to the emails here, and Jessica Basso signed up. Jessica Basso, this book is yours. You can email us your address at info@maventruth.com, or I can follow, or if I don't get an email from you, I will email you as well. And we'll send out Kathy's book. So congratulations, Sharon and Jessica. You win Kathy's books. Those of you who did not win, it's okay. You're not a loser. It's all right. You simply will now go to celebratekids.com and you will buy 8 Great Smarts. Okay? So we're all winners here, right?
I love it.
Hey, thank you for joining this MAVEN live stream. Again, make sure you sign up for our email list. You're on our list. You're getting these updates. We are doing these live streams on a regular basis now to equip really particularly parents and educators and youth leaders and pastors. And we actually are in the middle of planning an upcoming webinar. So we have been talking to lots of parents, reading lots of things out there about so many parents who are considering homeschooling in the future. And so Erin and I are putting together a 5-day webinar that we will be announcing here within the week on how really a homeschool 101. How do you even start this? What do you need to think about for those of you who are just even considering it? So make sure you're on an email sign-up list, and we will be emailing out all the details when that webinar becomes available. So anyway, thank you, Kathy, for being with us. We love you. You're a fantastic resource to the body of Christ. Thank you for what you do. And hey, thanks everyone for joining us. All right, we'll see you next time.
Did it stop?